Good morning, Patriots. Welcome to the 270th consecutive Friday meeting of the East Valley Red Friday Patriots. You know, looking out at this group from my perch up here, I think that patriotism is alive and well. What say you? Yeah! Well, thank the good Lord for patriots like you folks. You know, think about it. We're rapidly creeping up on that number 300. Now, isn't that really something to consider the fact that we are going to have one huge hell of a celebration come number 300? I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do it. You know, I can vividly remember our very first Red Friday breakfast 5 years ago. But I can't remember a dang thing I did yesterday, and there's something really wrong with that picture. So when number 300 rolls around, please, please, please take a lot of photographs so you can tell me about it the following day. Hey. Did you enjoy those sugar treats this morning? Yeah. Well, be it known that you are among friends here. If you want to dunk those sugar-coated treats in your coffee cup, feel free to do so. Go right ahead. What's eaten at the Legion stays at the Legion, and we will not spill the beans on you. You know, speaking of donuts, I'd like to recognize Ken McNeil and Rip Davis for furnishing today's treats. Where's Ken? Ken is right here. And Rip came in this morning, ate breakfast, and had something that he said that took priority over Red Friday. I doubt that very seriously. Rip doesn't like crowds, so he exited. But when you see him, please give him thanks for the donuts that he and Ken shared this morning. By the way, these guys got up at 4 a.m. in order to start rolling dough. And I want to thank you for that because I know you're not an early riser. Now, as most of you are aware, donuts are a once-a-month treat. And they're brought in order to celebrate Red members who have birthdays falling within that particular month. So those of you that are birthday celebrants for the month of August, please stand. Come on, come on, come on. Well, I have a list that I believe is reasonably accurate. Rip Davis, Dwayne Evanson, Grant Fleming, D. Hammond. D is not here. John Jones, Dennis Kunkel, Marcel Mathieu, Lynn McCarthy, Dave Rasmussen, Lily Armijo, David Phelan, George Heikkinen, Rita James, John Welch, Inez Heineman, Andy Anderson, Frank Fleming, Mark Suffering, and Tom Cassatt are all August birthday celebrants. You know, we'd also be remiss if we didn't send a shout out to some of the folks who've been diligent behind the scenes in order to support our breakfast meetings. Les Jones and Dennis Miller, please raise your hands. These two gentlemen have taken on the responsibility for weekly setup and dismantle of our banner displays and the manhandling of these big TV monitors. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for supporting our program. Appreciate you. Also, deserving of our recognition and appreciation are Barry McDonald and Larry Smith. These men have taken charge of the setup, operation, and dismantling of our audio-video systems for each of our meetings. And believe me, we're very appreciative of your efforts. Barry, and Larry. Thank you. So, can I have a hooah for Ken, Rip, Les, Dennis, Barry, and Larry? Hooah! Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, next Wednesday, August the 7th, is National Purple Heart Appreciation Day. And today's meeting will be focused on the history of the Purple Heart and its significance as a decoration of the United States Military Forces. Purple Heart is a decoration that recognizes the physical sacrifice of service members who were wounded or killed while serving in the United States Armed Forces. It's awarded for injuries sustained in combat and for those killed in action. The Purple Heart is a symbol of honor and bravery and is considered a solemn distinction that acknowledges the ultimate sacrifice of a service member. I believe the video we are about to preview will be an excellent introduction to today's program. Please focus on Almanac Purple Heart.
And now a page from our Sunday morning almanac. Today is Purple Heart Appreciation Day. While the Medal of Honor is still the highest military decoration, the Purple Heart is the oldest. This is what it looks like now, but it began like this. The Badge of Military Merit, an extraordinary piece of American history.
The Badge of Military Merit is significant because it is the inspiration for the modern Purple Heart.
Peter Bedrosian is program director of the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor in New Windsor, New York. The hall has one of only 3 known original cloth and silk badges of merit, issued and designed by George Washington himself. Let it be known, he ordered, that he who wears the military order of the Purple Heart has given of his blood in the defense of his homeland and shall forever be revered by his fellow countrymen.
Color purple is the color of royalty. The purple dye is expensive. The average person couldn't afford a purple garment, and so purple would signify an elevation of your status above those around you.
After independence, though, the merit badge was forgotten. But in 1932, on the bicentennial of Washington's birth, General Douglas MacArthur revived it. It would no longer be a stitched patch, but a medal featuring the bust of Washington and his coat of arms, given to service members killed or wounded by enemy action.
It's the warrior that's being honored here. What the warrior goes through remains the same.
Tony Lassiter is one of those warriors. He served in Vietnam.
We were on convoy, and that's when we were ambushed, and two of my soldiers were killed.
Nearly 2 million Purple Hearts have been awarded since 1932. Among the recipients, Michael Clemente's father.
This is him here.
Michael Clemente Jr. brought pictures and paperwork so that his father's name could be added to the Purple Heart honor roll.
There's his name and his citations. He was in Battle of Bulge, and yeah, he was in a lot of battles.
As for Tony Lassiter's, he keeps his framed, a reminder of his service and sacrifice.
One medal that you don't want to receive because you got to get wounded or killed to receive it. But I mean, it's just special to me. Every morning when I walk out that door, there's my medal hanging there. But there's a lot of pain to get that medal.
Will you join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Hey, we have got some first-time visitors that have joined us this morning, and I would like to take a moment to recognize them. Charles Wather. Charles, raise your hand over there. Charles is a resident of Las Palmas, and he is a guest of Ron Callahan. Ron, you guys are relatively new to our program as well. How many meetings have you attended thus far?
I believe 4.
And you're already in a recruiting mode. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Well, Charles, glad to have you with us today, very much so. And then we have Rich Conlon. Rich, where are you? Rich, I believe, is a guest of Fred Hammond. Is that correct? You live close to Fred? That's unfortunate. I knew there was something in common there, Fred. Rich is a United States Army veteran, served 1967 to 1971. We're glad to have you with us today. Thank you. Also, Kathy Michael. Kathy is sitting right here. Kathy is a resident of Las Palmas Grand, and I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, your significant other was a United States Air Force and a veteran, and he was at one time deployed.
Correct.
To where?
Just about everywhere.
I can.
Also Green Beret.
What? And he's still in the sack this morning?
He's still sleeping. They raised him to be a night owl.
I'm going to send a couple of folks back home with you in order to shake him out of the sack. Make sure that he's here next time. We're glad to have you with us today, very much so. And Linda Whitker. Linda, raise your hand here. Linda is also a guest of Ron Callahan, and she is a resident of Las Palmas. You are a veteran spouse, and your husband served 26 years, 1971 to 1997, and was an orthodontist in the United States, what branch? Army. Glad to have you with us today. I can assure you we appreciate, I hope that I haven't missed anybody. Is there anyone here that first meeting that I've missed? I don't think so. I think I got all of them. Glad to have all of you folks with us today. You know, my father, Richard Lafitte Nations, was one of 12 siblings, and my mom, Gertha Mary Goodman, was one of 3 siblings. So as you might expect, I've got a bunch of relatives, most of whom were born and raised in East Texas. And there's a lot of stories about those rednecks. One of my father's oldest brothers, Uncle Rasmus Formaldehyde Nations, was born and raised over in Tenaha, Texas, and he was nicknamed Formaldehyde at birth because he was such a good-looking baby. On her first look at Rasmus after giving birth, my grandmother, Ellen Nations, was quoted as saying that Rasmus was such a beautiful baby that he should be preserved in formaldehyde. And that nickname stuck. Now, like most of us nations who grew up in East Texas, formaldehyde was quite poor for most of his life. And as a young adult, married with kids, he was living in trailer estates with a lot of prized yard art. He was working 12-hour days, 6 days a week for a local sawmill in Tenaha, earning minimum wage, barely scraping by. That is, until formaldehyde came into a small fortune, although the prosperity was somewhat short-lived. You see, in order to feed his family, formaldehyde hunted almost every night. He hunted varmints like possum, rabbit, raccoon, armadillo, squirrel, feral hogs, coyote, deer. When he wasn't hunting, he'd go out frog gigging, or he would run a trot line over a bayou to catch catfish. Formaldehyde was not only a skilled hunter, but he was also a great cook. He could put together a meal for a king suited to a queen's taste, and the sauces and gravies that he concocted were absolutely stellar. And as long as guests sitting at his dinner table didn't know what they were eating, they were very, very complimentary of his culinary delights, often encouraging Formaldehyde to market his food. Well, the more Formaldehyde thought about it, the more he and his wife Geraldine were convinced that he should consult with a local cannery about bringing his product to market, and they did just that. The Tennehaw Cannery Company agreed to can his product, develop a label, and promote Formaldehyde for his first entree into the food market with local grocers. So Formaldehyde geared up his hunting and his trapping in anticipation of a boatload of orders to come in. I'm told that the launch of his first product was overwhelmingly successful, at least in East Texas. Sales went absolutely through the roof, and Formaldehyde was starting to make a lot of money. That is, until the federal government shut him down. Apparently, the feds were concerned about the health risk of consumers who might ingest Formaldehyde's food product. You see, he was not licensed as a commercial enterprise. He didn't commercially raise the animal products used in his canned product. And quite frankly, the elite stuffed shirts in Washington, D.C. were appalled at the very thought of what Formaldehyde was selling. They simply could not comprehend the thought of anyone wanting to consume his canned goods, not even East Texans. So Formaldehyde's short-lived prosperity came to a screeching halt, all because of a bunch of bureaucrat stuffed shirts from D.C. that simply couldn't understand or appreciate an East Texan diet. Formaldehyde did save one case of his product, and before he passed, he gave Hank and I a can to sample. And I'll have to tell you, we have yet to open that can because we're saving it for a very special occasion. You see, Formaldehyde's first and only canned product was creamed possum with sweet potatoes garnished in coon fat gravy. That is an East Texas culinary delight. And as they say in East Texas, possum, are they good eating? You guys simply cannot understand what kind of family I came from. You know, next Wednesday, August the 7th, America will observe National Purple Heart Day, which commemorates the creation of the oldest military decoration for military merit. The Purple Heart honors the men and women who are of the Order of the Purple Heart. As we look back on the medal's history, we find that the Purple Heart's first predecessor was the Fidelity Medallion, created in 1780 by the Continental Congress. But the Fidelity Medallion was only awarded to 3 soldiers that year. 2 years later, 1782, General George Washington created the Badge of Military Merit. It was in the form of a cloth Purple Heart. And because the Fidelity Medallion was never again bestowed, it is generally thought of more as a commemorative award. And the Badge of Military Merit is instead considered to be the first United States military decoration and the Purple Heart's successor. At the time it was introduced, the Badge of Military Merit was to be presented to soldiers for any singular meritorious action. And according to General Washington, the Badge of Military Merit would be given to soldiers who displayed not only instances of unusual gallantry in battle, but also extraordinary fidelity and essential service. So during the Revolutionary War, the requirements for earning the badge were a lot different from today's Purple Heart. Soldiers had to do something unusually heroic or perform some act that was essential to the success of the Continental Army, which sounds more like something you would have to do to earn what we now know today as the Medal of Honor. The badge was actually quite simple. A purple-colored heart-shaped cloth with the word merit stitched across it in white. This device, the Badge of Military Merit, was affixed to the uniform coat above the left breast and permitted its wearer to pass guards and sentinels without challenge, and to have the recipient's name and regiment inscribed in a book of merit. So, in a way, both the Medal of Honor and the Purple Heart originated from the Badge of Military Merit. In the years before 1782, most military awards were given only to officers who had secured grand victories in battle. But the Badge of Military Merit was truly a military medal by the people and for the people. It was one of the first awards in military history that could be given to lower-ranking enlisted soldiers or non-commissioned officers for outstanding service. Most historians indicate that only three people received the Badge of Military Merit during the American Revolutionary War. All of them were non-commissioned officers, and the only ones who received the award from General George Washington himself. It is unknown how many soldiers were decorated with the Badge of Military Merit during or following the American Revolutionary War, because the book in which recipients' names were recorded has been lost for more than 200 years. Until George Washington's birthday, 200th birthday, February 1932, the Badge of Military Merit persisted as a mere Revolutionary War footnote. But through the efforts of General Douglas MacArthur, the United States War Department received the decoration and created the Order of the Purple Heart. Today, the medal bears a bust of George Washington and his coat of arms. General MacArthur wanted to refresh and rename the award in time for the bicentennial of George Washington's birthday in 1932. He needed experts to design the medal, and to do so, MacArthur worked with the Washington Commission of Fine Arts, and he also reached out to a heraldry specialist by the name of Elizabeth Will, who at the time was employed at the Army's office of the Quartermaster General. Elizabeth was tasked to redesign the newly revived award, and it was she who created the design sketch used for the present medal. The revived Purple Heart medal featuring George Washington's likeness was designated primarily as a combat decoration only for the Army or Army Air Corps, recognizing commendable action as well as those wounded or killed in combat. And at the time of the introduction, that Purple Heart could not be posthumously given, nor could it be presented to the recipient's family. But the award was made retroactive, allowing World War I soldiers who had earned certain awards to apply for the Purple Heart. 10 years later, 1942, President Roosevelt and the War Department further defined the qualifications for receiving a Purple Heart, designating it for those who were wounded or killed in combat as a result of enemy action while serving in the United States military. They also expanded the eligibility of the award to all branches of the military service and gave authorization to present posthumous Purple Heart medals. In 1942, with the establishment of the Legion of Merit Medal by the Act of Congress, the practice of awarding the Purple Heart for meritorious service was discontinued. In the years since, the qualifications that dictate who is eligible to receive a Purple Heart have changed over time, and they will continue to evolve even until today. The same is true for other military decorations for valor in combat. The question often arises as to how many Purple Heart medals have been awarded since its introduction in 1932, and the answer is it can only be estimated. There was not a consistent record kept since the Purple Heart decoration was established 92 years ago, so we can only estimate the total number that have been awarded. Now, military personnel and morning report records were sometimes lost during wartime when headquarters would be overrun. And unfortunately, many Army and Air Force records were lost during the fire at the National Personnel Records Center in 1973. But it is estimated that approximately 1.9 million Purple Hearts have been awarded since its creation in 1932. The Purple Heart differs from most other decorations in that an individual is not recommended for this decoration. Rather, he or she is entitled to it upon meeting specific criteria for wounds received in combat. A Purple Heart is a solemn distinction and means that a service member has greatly sacrificed themselves or paid the ultimate price while in the line of duty. A Purple Heart is awarded for the first wound suffered, and for each subsequent award, a bronze oak leaf cluster is worn in lieu of another medal in the Army, Air Force, and Space Force. Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard recipients add a bronze star for each subsequent award. A sixth award of the Purple Heart is represented by a silver oak leaf cluster or silver star, branch dependent. No more than one award will be made for one wound or injury received at the same instant, or from the same missile, force, explosion, or agent. Under no circumstances is the Purple Heart awarded for non-combat injuries. It's the oldest U.S. military honor still bestowed upon service members today. The decoration's plain inscription for military merit barely expresses its significance. But that significance is memorialized in the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor, located in Windsor, New York. You may also be familiar with the organization now known as the Military Order of the Purple Heart, which was formed in 1932 for the protection and mutual interest of all who have received the decoration. Headquartered in Springfield, Virginia, the Military Order of the Purple Heart is chartered by Congress exclusively for combat wounded veterans. And it is the only veteran service organization comprised strictly of combat veterans. The funds for welfare, rehabilitation, and service work carried on by the organization are derived through the collection of used household items, the operation of thrift stores, and through the donation of automobiles and monetary donations. We have 2 such thrift stores that are owned and operated by the Military Order of the Purple Heart right here in the Mesa, Apache Junction area. The Military Order of the Purple Heart Service Foundation, also known as the Purple Heart Foundation, was later created in 1957. It was created as a nonprofit organization, and for more than 60 years, the Purple Heart Foundation has solely dedicated itself to funding programs and services that support our nation's heroes. There are a few Purple Heart firsts that I'll share with you today. Sergeant William Brown, Sergeant Daniel Bissell, and Sergeant Elijah Churchill were the first to receive the Badge of Military Merit during the Revolutionary War. That was immediately following the Badge of Military Merit replacing the Fidelity Medallion. All 3 sergeants were wounded while performing significantly gallant and valorous acts. Another first. Army General Douglas MacArthur received the first modern-day Purple Heart Medal for his services in the Pacific Theater, specifically in the Philippines during World War II. Another first. The first woman to receive the Purple Heart was Chief Nurse Beatrice Mary McDonald, who in World War I was assigned to a British clearing hospital in Belgium. McDonald lost her right eye when German aircraft bombed her hospital. In 1936, following the introduction of the Purple Heart decoration, she received the Purple Heart Medal retroactively for her wounds, making her the first woman to earn the award. She was also the first woman to earn the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest decoration for valor. and she also earned the Distinguished Service Medal. MacDonald served with the Army in Belgium and France for the remainder of World War I. The late Curry T. Haynes had the largest number of Purple Hearts bestowed upon a single service member to date. 10 Purple Hearts. Curry, who served in the Vietnam War as an Army sky soldier in the 173rd Airborne Brigade of the 503rd Infantry, was awarded his first Purple Heart after an ambush in the jungle where he was shot in the arm. After surgery in Japan, Haynes returned to the front where his actions would later result in being awarded his 9 additional Purple Hearts. Curry Haynes passed away in July of 2017 from cancer at age 71 years of age. Folks, as we speak, the United States has boots on the ground supporting combat operations and numerous unspecified, highly classified locations around the world. These are operations the United States government will not disclose, and rightfully so. They are dangerous missions you will never hear of. Every day, thousands of American service members serving in those hostile zones around the world selflessly put their lives on the line to support U.S. interests and the interest of our allies. And yes, the names of those who are wounded or die on classified missions as a result of those hostilities may never be publicized. For those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and for those who have incurred battle wounds, we will be forever grateful. So, as we approach Purple Heart Day on August the 7th, let us pause to say thank you to all the brave men and women who have fought for our nation's freedom and bear the scars of war. Today, we have such men among us, men who have embraced and overcome the anguish and challenge of their wounds. And we are honored and privileged to have them in our Red Friday community. These folks continue to support our armed forces and our deployed warriors, and we are extraordinarily grateful for them. So it is our desire to honor these veterans of war and Purple Heart recipients with a small token of the group's sincere appreciation for their personal sacrifice and the assurance that when needed, this group will be there for them and their families. I would ask that those of you who are the recipients of the Purple Heart decoration, please come forward and stand in front of this banner. If you are a recipient of the Purple Heart, please come forward. Brad, come on over here. John, if you will, right here. Right here next to this. There you go.
Kind of a moving target.
Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. Gentlemen, we have 3 Purple Heart recipients standing in front of you, one of which has been awarded 3 Purple Hearts during his service in Vietnam. There is little that this group can possibly say to you other than thank you for what you have sacrificed for this country. But we do have a very small token to remind you of our appreciation. We'd like to present that to you this morning. Wait till he finishes and we'll get the photos, okay? Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Brad. Thank you very much, Chuck. And you folks stay right here. We want to get a photograph of just the 3 of you. John, will you pull right over here so that we can, no, I'm talking, you move this way. Because I would like that banner to be in the, there you go. So turn sideways here, just a little bit, just a little bit. You turn sideways just a little bit. Turn, there you go. Now do the number.
Gentlemen, this way. Again. Smile. Thank you.
Can I have a standing ovation for these gentlemen? It'll be at the end of this next presentation, this one and this one. This will not be pinned on her, that will. This morning, I'd like to share with you a story of a soldier who was not so fortunate to return home to his family from battle. You see, this is the story of a soldier who was killed in action while fighting Japanese enemy forces in the battle for Okinawa. This is the story of Edward Richard Jaeger. Edward was born in 1918 in central Texas near San Antonio. And from birth, he was nicknamed Boy. 5 years of age, his family moved to Visalia, California, in the San Joaquin Valley, where Ed ultimately graduated Visalia Union High School in 1937. Upon completion of high school, Ed registered with the Selective Service System, and he was employed by Orange Belt Stages of Visalia. Employed there as a commercial bus driver. At the time, Orange Belt Stages was affiliated with Airways Transportation System. Ed had an excellent job, was in good grace, highly regarded by his supervisors. Ed was employed by the bus company for 7 years, when in May of 1944, he received notification from his local draft board to report for induction screening. For several years, Ed's employer had worked with the local draft board in order to prevent his call-up because of his importance of his job in his community. But their efforts fell on deaf ears when Ed passed the induction screening with flying colors. At 6'3", weighing 175 pounds, Ed was a sizable fella, excellent health. On May 24, 1944, at 25 years of age, Ed received correspondence from the local draft board directing him to report for induction in the United States Army on 23 June 1944. Ed had 1 month to get his affairs in order. Upon induction, Ed was ordered to basic combat training. Camp J.T. Robinson, located near the city of North Little Rock, Arkansas. He was assigned to Delta Company, 104th Battalion, 2nd Training Brigade. This was an infantry training component subordinate to the 104th Infantry Division with headquarters at Camp Adair in Oregon. With the start of World War II, Camp Robinson took on a role as an infantry replacement training center, conducting both Army basic combat training and medic training. In addition to its role in training soldiers, Camp Robinson also housed large German and Italian prisoners of war, capacity of more than 5,000 prisoners. At the time, the post was the state of Arkansas's second largest city, with an average daily population of 50,000. In 1946, at the conclusion of World War II, an estimated 750,000 soldiers had undergone basic combat training at Camp Robinson. In September 1944, upon completion of basic training, Edward was deployed to the Pacific Theater, and he was assigned as a rifleman to Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 305th Infantry Regiment, 77th Infantry Division. The 305th Infantry Regiment served in the liberation of the Philippines, arriving there on 23 November 1944. The regiment fought extraordinarily hard battles throughout the Ryukyu Islands and moved on to fight on the island of Okinawa. They fought there for a 2-month period, 27 April through 27 June 1945. On May 9, 1945, while fighting on the island of Okinawa, midway into the Okinawa battles, and only 4 months till the end of World War II, 26-year-old PFC Edward Richard Jaeger was killed in action by enemy gunfire. During the engagement, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion of the 305th Infantry Regiment, was attacking a heavily fortified Japanese enemy position. Much enemy sniper fire was encountered during the action. Edward was hit by an enemy sniper, and medical aid was rushed to him immediately, but Edward died instantly. On the day of his death, Edward was buried in the 77th Infantry Division Cemetery on the island of Okinawa, alongside the other heroes of the Okinawa campaign. Funeral services were held by the regiment's Protestant chaplain. The Okinawa campaign was the bloodiest in the Pacific theater, with more casualties than the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. The Americans suffered heavy losses from air attacks. 36 ships sunk, 368 ships damaged, including battleships, carriers, cruisers, and destroyers. Kamikaze attacks were responsible for sinking 30 of those vessels. Additionally, during the 3-month Battle of Okinawa of April through June 1945, the United States lost 763 aircraft, while the Japanese lost 7,830 aircraft. The battle also caused a humanitarian disaster for civilians, as the Japanese virtually enslaved Okinawans. They used them as human shields to include children, and they forced mass suicides among the civilian population. American casualties reached a staggering 49,151. 12,520 were killed or missing. 36,631 were wounded. Casualties of the Battle for Okinawa rank second only to the Battle of the Bulge in the European theater. During the Battle for Okinawa, Edward's 305th Infantry Regiment alone suffered 211 deaths and 760 wounded. The Okinawa campaign resulted in Japanese casualties totaling 110,000. Civilian casualties are estimated to be 150,000. 24 service members received the Medal of Honor for actions performed during the Battle for Okinawa. On 2 July 1945, 7 weeks following his death, correspondence was sent to Edward's father by the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, confirming the posthumous award of the Purple Heart Medal to his son, Edward Richard Jaeger. Edward also earned the World War II Victory Medal and the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal. At the request of his parents, Ed's remains were exhumed from the 77th Infantry Division Cemetery on Okinawa, and they were transported to Visalia, California, where Ed was interred in the Jaeger family plot in March of 1949. Unfortunately, U.S. Army Private First Class Edward Richard Jaeger never had the pleasure of meeting his niece. In fact, she had yet been born when he was killed while fighting the enemy. But you know something? She is here with us today to hear her uncle's story. Pam Williams, will you please come forward? Pam, on behalf of our Red Friday group, we would like to present you personally a Red Friday lapel pin in order to thank you for the tremendous amount of work you do behind the scenes for this group. You have never failed to step up to the plate when called upon, and believe me, we are extraordinarily appreciative of your volunteerism there. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. That's okay, well, as long as we've got one. Also, to add to the phenomenal amount of information that was retained by your family about your Uncle Ed.
Boy.
We'll call him Boy. We would like to present you to go into Ed's archives, one of the Purple Heart commemorative pins as well.
Thank you.
And we definitely appreciate you sharing this story with us.
Oh.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I appreciate the work that you did to help me. All I knew that he was called Boy. He was never, I never knew his name until I was in the 20s, and that my was named after him.
Interesting.
And all of the research that you did to help me bring his story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recently, we announced that Larry, raise your hand. Hello, Larry. Recently, we announced that Larry May produced a flyer advertising our Red Friday program. And the flyers were primarily produced for you to use in recruiting tool when you meet someone that you wish to invite to our meeting. Well, the flyer has undergone a couple of revisions, and if you need a couple of these, they'll be located right up here when the meeting adjourns, and feel free to pick up a couple, and let's ensure that we get these distributed and used for what their purpose was intended. Also, I have received notification from the East Valley Veterans Parade Association requesting that those organizations wishing to register for this year's Veterans Parade should submit their applications promptly. And this year's Veterans Day Parade will be commemorated on Monday, November 11. So, if you wish to participate with our Red Friday group this year for the Veterans Day Parade downtown Mesa, I would appreciate it if you would either send me an email, a text, or a phone call. Let me know so I can start creating the list of those folks who will be participating. This will be our third year. This will be our third year to participate in the parade. So, to our first-time guests who've joined us today, thank you for rubbing elbows and breaking bread with us. Sincerely hope that you guys will join us again, sharing our camaraderie and support for our deployed warriors. And to all of you, let's not discount the importance of our mission, and that is to remember everyone deployed. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.